What do you do when you've done everything you can do? Everything within reason, when you've gone the extra mile even. And then you hit a massive plateau in life. What do you do? This is a universal human experience. And it doesn't matter what the activity is either. You could hit a plateau as a soldier, a gardener, a teacher, a writer, a nurse, a prepper. It doesn't matter. Human nature will eventually bring you to that vast, seemingly impassable plain known as the plateau. You've put in a lot of hard work, haven't you? But you're not in the winner's circle yet, are you? You're certainly not at the beginning of the race, whatever the race is, and you've done some good things, made some progress, and accomplished a lot of things, but somehow, the closer you get to your goal, the further away the prize becomes. Until you start to wonder what the prize really is. Was there even a prize at all? Have you been working toward nothing all along? Why does it feel like you're just banging your head against a wall? That is the plateau, and now that you're on it, you've noticed some annoying things. First of all, everything seems so dull, so monotonous. It's the same thing day in and day out. You've done the best you could with the time, energy, money, and mental abilities you had. But everything just seems so dull and boring. You are maxed out. You don't want to do any less than you're doing for fear that you'll lose any gains, but you don't believe you can do any more either, at least not without considerable sacrifice. And while sacrifice seemed fine in the beginning when you were starting out, indeed it's necessary to sacrifice in order to forge ahead. But now it seems almost monumental, insurmountable. Do you sacrifice even more of yourself and your time and energy and money? Maybe even take a bizarre leap that might not work at all? And secretly, you might not even want any more of what you wanted at one time. And why isn't your hard work working for you anymore? And like I said, it can happen to anyone. For the writer, it's called writer's block. He knows he can write, but he just can't think of one darn word anymore. All words are the same word. It's all so dull. For the doctor, he's tended to the same illnesses over and over with the same predictable results. For the musician, it's the same scale of notes. For the prepper, it's a basement full of good stuff, but there are mountains of more things to acquire, but he still doesn't have that feeling of safety he was promised if he prepared. And the list goes on. The worst part, I think, is when you just plateau in life, period. Not even a profession, just life. Every day starts to feel like the same day. You wake up, you do your work, whether it's for an employer or yourself, or even if you're retired. You cook your food or buy it cooked, you eat, you bathe. Maybe you'll watch TV or surf the internet, you'll clean up, and then sleep, and then it starts all over again. To be honest with you, I think this is where many people are right now. I think most people are just plateauing. I truly believe most people are decent people. They really are. Contrary to what social media wants you to think, most people really are fairly decent. And I think a great many of them are all finally looking up from the game board, in a dazed and confused manner, saying, "Where am I? What is happening here?" If you think about it, the whole world actually seems to be plateauing. I think it might be because the internet has brought us all lightning-fast information that can't be hidden anymore like it was in the old days. It can't be brushed under the carpet. Damage control can't be done as well as it used to be because it doesn't take a full week for information to travel from one nation to the next nation. Now it just takes a full minute. You know, you can only go through so many financial boom and bust cycles, so many depressions and golden eras, so many wars and treaties before the people of the nations look up and say, "Oh, this again?" Compared to generations in the past, most of us have plenty of food to eat, clean water, health care, education, living quarters, etc. And yes, I'm only too aware that there are huge differences between the haves and the have-nots in terms of services and goods and food. But if you look at the bigger picture of life on this planet, we really have reached a state of collective mass abundance. And now we are plateauing because we don't have to strive for that anymore. Nations often remedied this experience in the past by starting wars again. Nothing like losing a quarter of your population in bloody battle. It sort of makes you long for the old days, doesn't it? You can bet the wretched, greedy class of society knows that. Of course, but frankly, I'm not even sure it will work this time. Although you can see they're gearing up for war big time yet again. But, as I said, the people have plateaued. And they've looked up from the game board and they see what's going on. So here we all are on a big plateau. Some of us see it and some of us don't. We have various things to distract us from seeing the big plateau, though. Some of it is just harmless entertainment, movies, games, etc. Other distractions are more insidious, though, like drugs and political and social upheavals. But even those have become boring and predictable. They start out something like this. X group is filled with a bunch of extremely strange people on the fringe who claim they are being abused. X group cries out for help. Y group says, "Shut up, you bunch of freaks, you're lucky to be alive." Z group becomes indignant and says to Y group, "How could you be so cruel?" While ignoring the very real freaky dank behavior of X group. So X, Y, and Z groups begin to battle and yell at each other. Eventually, they come to a truce and an amicable agreement. Meanwhile, W group has been watching from the sides all along, and they want to get in on all the perks that victimhood brings. They want to dethrone the X group and become the current reigning king of fringe freaky groups. They will either demand much of what X group has fought for, or they will topple X group and become the reigning psychopathic group. And groups Y and Z will now have to put up with them and fight about them again. And on it goes, because that's what happens when you plateau. You can take those same dynamics and attach them to wars between different countries. X country fighting Y country fighting Z country. With the usual societal leeches in the background every single time, sucking every ounce of gold out of the population, while the skirmish for so-called common decency wages on and on. It's all a plateau, whether for bad people or good people, but as I said, most people are good people. So what is the solution? What do you do when you've accomplished a good deal, but you've gotten to the plateau stage and nothing seems worth it anymore? Well, the first thing you do is rest. That's right. You heard me right. You rest. Not the kind of rest that the bored person or the truant person might take, but real rest. Most people are at the plateau level not because they haven't worked hard enough, but because they've worked too hard. We're all human beings. We can only do so much. So I mean rest, real rest. It's okay to stop for a while. To stop all that scrambling and grasping and pulling and dragging and planning and scheming. It's okay to stop everything and just rest. That means you put everything aside except for basic existence, of course. You get off your phone, the internet, the TV, the radio, you dump the newspapers. You put the special interest groups and meetings on hold and you rest. You schedule a couple days off work and you don't plan anything for those days. You rest, you sleep. Now, I'm not talking about becoming a lazy person or a person who constantly self-indulges. We've all seen people who do nothing but expect everything, who self-indulge in grotesque greed and gluttony, who live in squalor because they can't bother to lift a finger to raise themselves out of filth. No, that is not what I am talking about. Friends, I am only talking about a little bit of rest. It's okay to stop. And then, after having rested, to look up and take stock of your situation. Is this where I want to be? Am I where I thought I'd be at this point? Why not? Was it really a lack of hard work? Or were monkey wrenches deliberately thrown into my plans by the greed-ridden element of society? You know, those people who gained financially from my hard work, while they led me around and around, like a team of oxen in a circular room. And I just didn't know it, because earlier on, I trusted, and later on, I was tired. After having a good rest and taking stock, perhaps you will find renewed energy and ideas to continue pursuing your goal and get off the plateau. That is entirely possible. And then you can go back at it with a renewed zest and better ideas. It's also entirely possible, though, that you might want to stop what you're doing completely and start something else. And you wouldn't have known that if you hadn't taken a rest. Of course, age does play a role here because you only have so much time in a lifetime. You can only start and stop your life so many times. And let's face it, the starting up is the fun part. That's when you plan, reach, grow, fight, gain. It's exhilarating. That's when you draw up your plans and buy your supplies and lay down in night, staring up at the ceiling, fantasizing about what you want and what you're going to do and exactly how you're going to do it. It's a great time for any project, but then comes the maintenance part of the plan and the plateau in our lives and in our plans. And even if you start again, that same greedy merchant element of society will try to secretly hijack your plans and benefit from your work once again while leaving you with scraps. Because that's how everything is set up to work in Caesar's world. A good long rest will help you to see and understand this. And you're not going to vote your way out of it, but you can decide where you'll place your time and energy. You know, none of us are going to make it out of here alive. None of us. We all know that, or at least we ought to know. Life is a time game. Time might not exist in physics, but it sure feels pretty real down here, bub. What we do with the time allotted to us matters, yet in the end, we still have to give up everything we've worked for. I remember once reading an article years ago. I don't remember who wrote it, but it was about social upheaval and the tearing apart of society. And the writer said, some things are worse than death. And I thought to myself, how can anything be worse than death? I mean, you're dead. It's over. You lose everything you worked for. How can anything be worse than death? But as the years have gone on, I realized just how right she was. Some things really are worse than death, as odd as that might sound. Civilization has come to the brink of destruction over and over again. Ask those who were caught in the whirlwind of fiery hell and war and torture whether that was better than death, because I don't think they'd say yes. I think they'd long for the peace of death. But for now, we are all here. And even though things are messed up and could be a lot better, they could also be a lot worse too. That doesn't mean you have to shut up and put up with whatever you're handed. That's not me saying, stop crying before I give you something to cry about. But sometimes a wider perspective really can change the way you look at things. You ask a 95-year-old man on his deathbed if he thinks he ought to have worked more overtime instead of playing with his kids. Ask a terminally ill cancer patient if she thinks she should have campaigned harder for the last election instead of finding a new knitting group to join. Both of them will probably say this: "Bring me to that window over there. Let me see the beautiful sun one more time. Let me see the dew on the grass. Let me hear the birds in the trees. Let me hear the conversations, however loud they might be, going on down in the alley between the houses. Yes, even the fights. Let me hear the sirens and breathe in the night air. Let me smell the scent of bread wafting from the bakery down the street. Let me hear the children laughing just one more time." You know, a plateau can be frustrating, yet it can be good at the same time. But consider this: it is entirely possible that you could be in paradise right now, and you don't even know it.